So I thought a demo was a good opportunity to show you a more holistic view of eVolve. Up until this point in the course, you've been seeing one view, which was essentially the client's perspective, but there are 4 separate types of views that can be seen in eVolve. In addition to that, because eVolve is an application, it's basically a platform that can host any kind of content. So the content you've been going through has been relevant to your course. But we use eVolve in all of our online career programs, and each one of those programs takes a different type of content. And so I'm going to be able to show you basically how we do that. So in order to do that, I'm going to first sign in as a client to give you a slightly different view than maybe what you've been seeing the last couple of weeks. So what you see right now is a login page. Each organization that uses eVolve is its own entity in the system and has its own separate login page that can be linked to their website. So only their users use that particular login page, both staff users and client users. It can be branded in any way that makes sense for the agency. So I'm going to sign in as a sample client. And right away, it looks very similar to what you'd seen in your course over the last couple of weeks. The difference is that the workspace listed is branded differently. Obviously, it's a different name, different dates that it's being offered. And the client, as the sample client, can basically access whatever sessions he or she has been registered in and enrolled in eVolve. So in this case, this client has been enrolled in a session called Work Targeting, and so he would go in just like you have been. This, again, looks slightly different than what you have seen over the last couple weeks because in this particular program, we enabled more features to be used. Basically, I believe it's just the bookmark feature that was used different, where the client can go through some of the content and bookmark some of the pieces and have it available right on his summary page. But like what you've seen, there's the What's New feature. Everything else is pretty much what you've seen. Now, if you go into development, this is where the differences exist, because in your program, you had 3 learning units and the Getting Started unit. You had 3 learning units that were relevant to what you were learning, but in this work targeting program, the client is working through learning units related to targeting work, of course. So that's one difference, is that he has access to different learning units. The other difference is that the actual learning unit itself is structured differently. So in this learning unit, we've decided that there were going to be more information slides. There were going to be additional reflective questions. There were going to be more activities, and all the activities would come at the bottom of the learning unit. So just structurally, there are some differences as well. In this learning unit, there's also some videos that are embedded so that when the client clicks on that information slide, he's offered a video to watch. So there's some slight differences there as well. But other than that, everything is, very similar to what you've seen in your program. So I'm going to log out as that client. And now I'm going to log in as a staff user. Of course, a fake staff person. Right away, I am able to tell some of the user permissions that the staff user has access to. So basically, when your staff log in to eVolve, they only see what they have permission to see. And the permission is set by the roles that they are assigned. So in this case, this user, Brenda, she is able to see the administration applet, the collections applet. She has a dashboards applet, which shows that she's been assigned as a facilitator in some courses. And if she were also participating in something as a learner or as a client, she would have a 4th quadrant here where she would have access to her sessions as a learner. So in this case, she does have the ability to do some of the administrative things in eVolve. And so what she does, she would click into her organization. And under the administration, she can register staff, clients, register staff, set up sessions, create new services, manage some of the organizational elements for like loading up the logo and things, and run some reports. So under the client area, I want to point out a couple of things. This is where she would create a new client, or she would manage passwords. So for example, if you remember when I sent out your initial welcome email to the course, I said you'll have a follow-up email from eVolve with your password. This is where we would have registered, set you up in here, then we would have assigned you a user login name, and then we would have just generated a password and emailed it right out to you. We actually would never interact with that password, or we don't keep a record of what that password is, and if for some reason you forgot your password or never received it, we would just generate you a new one and send another email. And this is where that occurs. So registering someone in eVolve is the first step, and then the next step is actually enrolling the client into whatever services they're going to be a part of. And so a client can be enrolled in as many services as you want. If you break up, maybe you have a job search service, maybe you have a college prep service, maybe you also have an alumni service. And so one of your students may actually be registered in more than one service. And in that case, you would enroll them here. So their enrollment information here is here, and then any register notes as well. Staff have a similar layout. If I go to our staff person, here you can see that Brenda has her basic information, her password information, but then she also is assigned different sessions as a facilitator because she's also a facilitator. And that's just a term we use in eVolve that could mean whatever it is that you mean. It might be instructor, it might be counselor, it might be career practitioner, whatever terms you might use in your particular service. In eVolve, we refer to it as facilitation. So in this case, she is registered as and assigned as the facilitator for two programs, the job search and the work targeting program. Down at the bottom, you can see where she has been assigned her permissions. So we have administrators, we have facilitators, we have designers, who are those people that can author content. And actually in each of those areas, there's varying stages. So basic facilitator has certain rights that they can see and do, and premium designer and other roles have other rights. So you can click here and see. It's quite easy to choose another role and assign it and click OK. So right now she can do all three of those things. In sessions, this is where you would set up an instance of a session. So for example, the course that you ran, that you were in this week, if I decided that I wanted to run that course again, this is where I would go to set up another instance of that course to register people into it. So I would click on the plus, I would name the course, I would assign what kind of branding I wanted it to have, and I'm going to get to these in a moment where I can show you what those two things are, but I would basically assign what kind of content and branding it would have, and I would click OK, and it would show up here, and then I would assign these kinds of details. I would assign the start and end date, I would assign the facilitator, and then as I start to enroll clients, the roster would start to appear here. So as I click through the different sessions that are already in this demo organization, you can see that the details of those things change as you go along. I mentioned services. So we've talked a lot about services actually in your course, and I refer to it as your eGuidance services. And as you decide what your vision is, and as you start to mold the kinds of things you're already doing, You may determine that you have more than one service that you're offering. You might have a service for alumni and a service for current students. And you may decide you want to give each of those things different names, especially if you imagine one student doing multiple services and you want to take them from one to the next. So if you decide that that's something you wanted to do and you used eVolve in that, you could set them up here where each of them could have their own logo. They could each have their own consent form. They could each have some descriptions about that. And as you then set up your sessions, you can attach the branding to it. So if I click here, you can start to see in the middle all of the services that are attached to a particular brand, to a particular logo. Under organizations, this is where you would add some basic information that clients get access to in their contact info. And under help, so the details that are listed here will be listed under help for the client. And then this is where you can also upload your logo so that it goes throughout the system. And then we have some basic reports. We have some client reports about enrollment and completion status. We have some staff and organization reports, permission levels, various information about facilitators, and then also service and sessions. So all of these export to PDFs. I'm sorry, some of them export to PDF. These export to Excel so that you can merge them with any other type of data reports you might be using in your org. So I'm going to go back to the home page. That's the administration in a nutshell. I'll return to it in a moment. But I wanted to move up here to collections. So collections is the area that we author content, we organize content, and we also connect content with the functions you want to use in your service. So I'm going to click into this collection because it's so different than the kind of information that you had access to in your course. So this is part of our new employment program of BC. So most of the content, all of it actually, is going to be related to job search preparation, finding work, maintaining work. So in this area, this is an area that clients never see. It's just staff users that see it. And it has content. It has our way of grouping content together. We have a web link resource library. And we have where we set up what kind of functions are going to be in a particular service. And then you have basic information about the collection, just to keep them separate. So if I go back to content, and I go into our content browser, you can see that it has a library of slides, information slides that you would have seen in your learning units. So information slides, library of activities, a library of reflection questions, and then how they're grouped together in learning units. So if I go back home for a moment and I move into a new collection, looks just the same, but as I open it up, you'll see this collection doesn't have any slides. There's one new activity, no reflections, and no learning units. So a collection is blank until you start to create what those slides, activities, and reflection questions are. I'm going to go back into this one that's already populated and go into a slide. So if I go into decision-making model slide, I click it and it opens it up. And to edit it, we just click on it and we can edit the slide now, save it, and anywhere that slide is used in this organization will now be updated. If I decided that I needed to create a new slide, I would click on the plus, name it, give it a description, find it down here at the bottom. And now our editor here opens up and I'm able to start to create it. I could also upload images if I needed or wanted to. I have my image library here where I can upload new images, graphics. I could also link resources from our resource library. I could also, if I am savvy enough, use HTML if I wanted to do something more complicated. We also have some basic style options where you can create some basic styles. But it really is sort of an editing space for you to create a slide that makes sense for you. Once our slides, activities, and reflection questions are created, we can go into the learning units and see that this is where that information gets put together. So I'm going to click on the Knowing Who I Am learning unit. And when I was previously just logged in as that sample client, this was the learning unit that I took you to. I click on Preview. You can see that this was the structure that we looked at together. So now that I'm in the collections, if I realize that I need to update some of these slides, or I would like to remove a slide, or I think that I want to add an additional activity, I go into the organizer, which provides me with the content browser, and I can now open up that library of activities and see the ones that aren't in this learning unit and decide if there's one that I would like to drag and put into it. So it's a simple drag and drop into the learning unit. In addition, if I decided that there was one that I wanted to remove, I could drag and drop it out of the learning unit. Or if I decided that I wanted to reorder the learning unit, I could pick it up and put this activity up to the top if I wanted to. And then once I made whatever changes I wanted to, I could click on Preview, and I could then make sure that the changes were implemented the way that I wanted to. Anytime I make changes to a learning unit, it changes it throughout that particular organization. So once I have my slides and activities and reflections created, then I want to group those learning units into a particular program or service. So that's where I create a content map. So this is something that as a client, when you're going through a service, you don't ever actually see the content map, but it is the place where the facilitator controls the content. So this is where we would decide that we want to create a new map. And what learning units we wanted to have on our map. So I click on New Map, click the plus over here, and decide that we want these learning units on it. So if I were to use this map as it is, when the clients that get access to this map sign in, they won't have any content viewable. And if you remember in your course, when you logged in, you automatically had 4 learning units that were viewable. And that's because on your maps, I made all 4 learning units viewable to you. So if we want our clients that get access to this map to have a learning unit when they first log in, once they're added to the map, we're going to drag it and drop it to the top. And this allows now the clients that first log in and get this map, they'll see the Getting Started with Work Targeting. Another feature is every time we've, at least it's an option as you're creating content, so every time we've created a piece of content, we've added a description and we've added some facilitator guide information, which is just easy to edit and change. So when you're at a content map, and now you've put all this together onto one map, if you click on the facilitator guide, it will open up all of those little bits of information that you put together into one document for you. So later on, if you have one person creating the content, but another person actually delivering it with clients, it's a way to kind of pass on some valuable information with a purpose behind the content. This is basically a library of web links. Allows you to quickly find a web link that's in the system and update it so that you don't have to update every single session. You can update it in one location and it impacts everywhere it's located in the system. Workspaces is basically what we call the space that the client views when they're in the system. So throughout the last couple of weeks, you've been signing in, you've been clicking into your course, and you've been viewing your workspace. So your workspace is a combination of features and content. So when we're creating a new workspace in eVolve, the first thing we do is name it. We decide if this workspace is going to be a group workspace or an individual one. So I'm going to create a group like you had in your course. So here it is named. I'm going to click on it, give it a description. And now I'm going to decide what type of communication features are going to be enabled in this workspace. I'm going to decide that the clients are going to be able to chat with me. They're going to be able to post page comments. They're going to be able to send private messages to me. There's going to be a group reflection forum. And they're going to be able to see summary lists of their reflections and activities. I'd also like to be able to send them suggestions. And I could want to flag their information if I needed to. So these are the staff features. I'll leave the other one there. So then content map, this is where you're going to decide what content is linked to this workspace. So I'm going to click and see our options. We had just created a map called New Map. I'm going to click on that. And now it's linked to this workspace. We're going to choose what web links we want in their resource library. And now this workspace is ready to go. So our next step in the process is to go back to administration and start to decide when we want this workspace to be used. We're going to set up a session. We're going to assign branding. And we're going to find that workspace that we just created and use that one. So now when I click on, I'm in sessions and I click on new session, I have a name for it, I've said it's open. I've decided what logo is going to be attached to it. I've assigned what workspace, which is the content and the features. And now I get to decide what dates I want the clients to have access to it. The next step is to assign a facilitator. So I'm going to go to Staff, find the facilitator I want to assign, find the session name, new session, decide if I want her to be a primary facilitator or secondary facilitator. And primary would be what I was in your course. And now you'll see I'm here on Brenda's staff detail, and you'll see under facilitation I'm assigned to the job search group, the work targeting, and this new session we just set up. If I click here in sessions, you'll see here's the new session, the details we had already put in, and now I'm assigned as the facilitator. Brenda is. And there are currently no clients enrolled. So remember, we're already signed in as Brenda, so I'm going to click on Home. And you'll see now, under Dashboards, it was the 2 that were already there when we first logged in, and now there's the 3rd, the work targeting session that we just set up. So if I click on that, you'll see there are no clients logged in or assigned. But if I go into the work targeting that was already there, you'll see that there are some clients. So there are 2 sample clients that are set up in this session. And these 2 clients are, or at least in the course that you were in, there were 12 participants. So when I would click in on your session, I would see 12 little bits, little icons and details about what you had been up to. So if you had previously submitted reflections or activities, or posted a page comment or a group reflection, that information would be available to me here. Other information that is available to me is if you've never logged on, or what the date of your last time that you logged on was, date and time. So I can click on Sample Client 13 and see what's been up to, what this client has been up to since the last time we touched base. So it looks a lot like what it looks like for you as a participant, but now I'm just looking at Sample 13's participation and what is new for just Sample 13. So if I click here, it takes me right to the page comment that particular client has posted. And once I've reviewed it, I can check it off. And go back. And now that's gone. So then the next step is to go into the content map. So this is the default content map for this particular course. And as a facilitator now, this is how I control what kind of content is available to all the clients. So when a client first comes into this session, there are the only learning unit that the client sees is this one on top. But if I go into Sample Client 13 and I look at that client's particular content map, you can see that this client has access to all of the learning units. And really all that is the process of dragging and dropping it and opening it up for her. I can get a quick view of Sample Client 13's view of the system. As you can imagine, as you're going in and out of different sessions, it can get confusing quickly of which clients can see what content. So this gives me a quick client view of that content. And then I can also see a summary of all of the activities that that client has access to in the session and which ones he or she has submitted or has yet to submit. So in this case, this client has submitted one of all of these. So I can quickly go to it, review it, check it off, which is what I did. I can uncheck it if I want to be able to return at a later date and review it as well. So similar for the reflections that get submitted. And similar for the messages that get sent. One difference between the way I send messages and the way you would have sent me messages is when I click on the plus, I have the choice to send a message to just this client or to all clients in the session. Another element is as I make content map learning units available to clients, that's automatically jotted down. So you can see as we've been going through the demo, I've been making something visible, taking it away, making something visible. So it's been automatically updating the case notes, but I can also add my own note to the client. One other difference is when we're in the group reflection area, the only difference between what you saw in the course and what I see is I am able to, so there are all these questions that were already listed. As a facilitator, I can add a new question very easily. And it's added. So one thing I wanted to point out is as I'm going through clients, I do have the ability to see some progress that they're making through the content. I can see the last time this client logged in, what the last slide or learning unit was that the client clicked on, and a summary of the number of activities, number of reflections, group reflections, page comments, and messages that the client has sent or submitted. I also have the ability to click on this Adobe to get a participant status report. So that is running now. Which is basically an Adobe PDF summarizing the client's enrollment information and whatever case notes you had submitted. So if your service is funded at all and you have to have proof of participation, this is a nice summary report for you. For this particular client, you can also go to the content map and mark learning units completed as you feel they've been completed. So to do that, you roll over the learning unit, click on the arrow, and mark something completed. And whatever additional notation as a facilitator you'd like to make. And a check mark comes here. So when you run your participant status report or when an administrator runs other reports in the system, this particular learning unit for this client is now marked as completed. It's an automated, it's not automated, it's a manual process as a facilitator you do. So it's not something the system says this client has completed enough slides, and so now we mark it complete. It is a manual process because it's a counseling relationship, so it's more like checking off that the client has made enough progress in that area that they can move on. So that's eVolve in a nutshell. I'm certainly available to have additional demos to talk specifically about your organization, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the course. Thank you so much.